Maverick PT, welcome back to part B, our second part of this this little series of TZ2 of Gait. I'm gonna let you all in on a few little nuggets, a few little pearls of secrets, some things that I'll kind of typically go to, some pretty cool and basic things that'll help on out in this TZ2 portion of Gait. To kind of re-highlight in terms of the foot and the ankle, kind of the sequencing. Again, we're concerned about osteokinematics, so bone motion, multiple segments, and how that enables multiple articulation, articulating surfaces moving together at once, multiple joints moving at once. TZ2 portion of Gait, again, to re-highlight, we've got inversion of that calcaneus, which is going to invert that subtalar joint. The subtalar joint motion is then going to drive our mid-tarsal joint motion. So at that talonavicular, that calcaneal-cuboid kind of junction, we have our good, at that mid-tarsal joint, we're going to get our, we're still going to drive and facilitate dorsiflexion, but now we're going to start to lock on up. We're going to gather a relative adduction. We're going to start to invert so that the midfoot and the rear foot start to disassociate, so that forefoot really starts to be able to get something solid and firm to be able to push off of, so that that tibia and that fibula can start to laterally rotate on out, so that that pelvis can be kind of driven to the same side faster and quicker than what that femur is, so that we're not running, so that we're not walking in kind of that bowl of mashed potatoes. We need something firm and solid to anchor ourselves to. So what I'm going to do first, let's go through some anterior reaches, lower extremity, upper extremity drivers. I love the anterior lateral kind of reaching progression with the lower extremity driver. If we need to, for the sake of kind of mobility and a little support, we'll use kind of the wooden dowel. Base foot pointed at 12 o'clock on a clock. Remove my shoes, even though there's not a lot to them, so that you guys can kind of get a little bit more of an idea in terms of what the feet are doing. So what we're gonna do first, left foot is our base foot, left hand anchor point with the dowel. We're gonna go a little anterior lateral, kind of crossing over. We're really driving and facilitating the combination and sequencing of the dorsiflexion and the inversion at the talocurl, as well as that subtalar joint, as well as down in the mid-tarsal joint. We'll go some little anterior lateral kind of reaches with an upper extremity driver, knee-high reach. If I want to, I can add a little frontal plane driver with this as well to really get after that eversion of the calcaneus and of that subtalar joint a little bit more. To show you what that looks like from behind, left foot pointed forward. We'll go a little rotation, and now with that anterior lateral kind of lower extremity driver, let's add the little frontal plane, kind of little pendy swing. Driving the dorsiflexion and the inversion. By all means, you can progress to this with just body weight. What we'll do next, let's go dowel or not. You can kind of set yourself up in this toe touchdown, this reverse single leg toe touchdown kind of positioning. Right leg forward, left leg back is our base foot. And to add kind of some little single leg toe touchdowns to drive and facilitate that dorsiflexion and that inversion. We can also, with this, one of my favorites is to go after kind of a little frontal plane, a little 3D pendy with it as well, and a little transverse plane, little 3D pendy. I'll head on into, so little reference points wise, cone wise, let's go to some anterior reaches with some cones, upper extremity as our driver. We can go bilateral upper extremity drivers, or we can go a little contralateral. So what we'll do, positioning wise, we'll go anterior lateral and a little left lateral. And so knee driver as well. We can use a little knee driver just kind of forward or on a little bit of an angle to the left to kind of really help from the top down facilitate the transverse plane motion, so that rotation of the tibia and the fibula, being able to kind of grab onto that talus, kind of swooping back on up, almost like a hawk coming down, catching a rabbit or a little rodent on the ground. little TZ2. So my big time, some of my all-time favorites are to go with a little RXX and a little LXX squat kind of position, common. So LXX, we're going to use a bilateral or unilateral upper extremity driver. Important that both feet are pointed forward like that on kind of a clock, 12 o'clock position. In the TZ1 Transformational Zone 1 portion of Gait, we use these positions for TZ1 of that foot, front foot and ankle. So we're getting a lot of great stuff there. I like this in sync rotation and reach, so we go 45 to 90 degrees, because not only TZ1 at the front foot and ankle, it'll go after TZ2 of the back foot and ankle, but of this right hip. It'll really drive and facilitate that relative internal rotation, pelvis rotating to the right faster than what the femur is to the right, to really let up that posterior and lateral pelvic girdle complex. So let's go. So as you can see, right foot is nice and forward, and we're driving with that transverse plane kind of reach, the dorsiflexion inversion, TZ2. Also with this, I'll come on in and I'll add a little frontal plane kind of driver, driving TZ1 of the left foot and ankle and TZ2 of the back. This is a great little hybrid in which I really enjoy. To kind of tweak things up, crank up the wick a little bit, I'll rotate that right foot in a little bit. So a little uncommon LXX squat with the back foot positioned in the eye, internally rotated, so that as I use this in sync kind of rotation right here, or frontal plane kind of driver, I can shift my weight into right into my right butt and hip to really drive that dorsiflexion and that inversion of the foot and the ankle. So kind of a view from behind, LXX, let's go common, and let's go little ipsilateral, little unilateral, top down transverse plane driver, and now let's go a little frontal plane. Little frontal plane, and then let's go to our uncommon, which you just saw. From the front, to change the driving height, whether it's waist or knee, 45 or 90, little frontal plane, pendy swing. I love the wedges, OPTP slant wedges, Amazon.com, 15 or 16 bucks for a package of 2. Great Christmas present with Santa and his little elves coming on up. So we're going to use this guy to go after. Let's go to the left foot. We're going to position ourselves kind of in that frontal, kind of in this slant on down to kind of facilitate that frontal plane kind of motion a little bit, taking up the slack in the frontal plane. Just hoping that calcaneus to invert if frontal plane is an issue, to go after the subtalar joint, to really start to help lock up that mid-tarsal joint. So what we'll do, we'll go back to our little squats. We'll go transverse plane, so either bilateral, upper extremity kind of driver and reach 45 to 90 or beyond, or a little ipsilateral, a little unilateral kind of upper extremity driver, and again into the frontal plane. So taking up the slack in the frontal plane, we can come on in here. We can also, with these pendy swings, be creative and add like a little combination. I like to a lot of times, so I'm loading and swinging in the sagittal plane to my left, taking up the slack, and in the transverse plane, adding a little upside, a little contralateral driver to that TZ2 foot and ankle as I've taken up the slack or some of the slack in that frontal plane. We can also kind of switch it around, take up the slack in the sagittal plane with these guys. And so I can really feel myself get to end range in a big quick hurry by doing that, which will allow me to drive in the frontal plane more, as well as the transverse plane. Those are some of my go-tos in terms of my squat progressions, common and uncommon. So my anterior reaches, by all means, with these anterior reaches as well, you get to the point in terms of using these wedges, why not? Why not take up a little slack and really drive and facilitate the inversion, the dorsiflexion, the lateral rotation of that leg and that foot and that ankle complex. Oops, fumble. I like to go with the little pick in the press matrix. So single leg toe touchdown. I'll use that little contralateral arm as a driver for my pick. I reach 90 to 120 degrees and drive. 90 to 100 degrees. Go ahead and drive. I'll also use a little contralateral kind of wood chop. It's great for the TZ1 hip to load the butt, as pelvis is, relatively speaking, he is rotating left. We have the trunk rotating to the right, giving us that relative internal rotation of the right butt and the right hip. Top down driver is going to help foot and ankle wise dorsiflex and invert. Great little tool. Let's go do a couple lunges. I like the anterior lateral lunge with a little out of sync kind of rotation. So we played around with these guys for TZ1. We're using the upper extremity to drive in a different plane. We can drive the knee on an angle to the left and rotate straight laterally to the left, so 90 degrees to 120 and greater. We go a little lateral lunge. Sink your butt down and in. Take your arms. Give a little kind of out of sync rotation kind of load. Pelvis rotating to the right, trunk rotating to the left. Give a little progressive kind of oscillation at end range. Those are a few of my go-tos, as well as kind of the penny swings with the single leg toe touchdown. Right leg forward, left arm, so a little contralateral swing. I'm loading up in that TZ2 right hip, that deceleration of that adduction and that internal rotation, but foot and ankle wise, I'm driving the dorsiflexion as well as the inversion. I can add that, again, that sagittal plane with the right, take up that dorsiflexion kind of slack right here, and then I can go after dorsiflexion as well as transverse plane again with a little resistance. So kind of expand upon on what we just did a few minutes ago. TZ2 of Gait. Continue the locking up kind of process into being able to take off like that airplane. We're that slinky in which the body's going to continue to move throughout the chain, kinetic chain, force producing system that's linked together. There's going to be loading and unloading continually throughout the body to help this process of continual loading. So as different portions of the body are unloading, it's loading, proprioceptively speaking, connective tissue somewhere else throughout those anatomy trains in the body, taking advantage of those proprioceptors, the stretch, the compression, the tension, to joint capsules, to connective tissue, to provide feedback, but then to also get those little slinkies, that little push they need over the edge to propel us into consistency, efficiency, love, and great affinity for what it is that we love to do for a very long time. Guys, play around with these activities. I think you're going to really dig them. They will help you out, and they'll help you in your journeys in becoming more efficient. Have a great weekend, guys. Take care.